future.
Hello and welcome to part 1 of the Nostalgic Futures Halloween special. In this video I'm going to cover 10 of my favorite NES games to play during the Halloween season. And coming in at number 10 is BeetleJuice, a literal hot mess of a game that must have had a board meeting that went down something like this.
What are your qualifications?
Well, I attended Juilliard. I'm a graduate of the Harvard Business School. I travel quite extensively. I lived through the Black Plague, and I had a pretty good time during that.
What I mean is, can you be scary?
Oh, I know you're asking me. Can I be? What do you think of this? You like it?
Oh yeah, the soulless machine that was LJN. Take a good look at that map. It's going to be one of the only things that looks like it's from the movie. But honestly, as far as LJN games go, this one's really not that bad. Again, as far as LJN games go. You know, as long as you're ready for a cheap death every 17 seconds. But I mean, if you can deal with that, then yeah, the game's not too bad. It has extremely rigid controls, so you're probably gonna die all the time. I know I do. But at least the only problem with the controls is that they feel too rigid. It's better than sliding around or delayed responses or something like that. And honestly, even though the levels don't really seem to have anything to do with the movie, they are at least varied and they're kind of fun. You know, from what I understand, this game came out well after the movie, and it came out while the animated series was still running. So if you play it from the mentality of it's probably more based on the animated series, then it probably won't make you completely physically ill like it used to do me. Oh, and speaking of cheap deaths, this game does suffer from the kickback, the Castlevania-style kickback. When you get hit by an enemy, it's going to kick you back a little bit, and it's probably going to send you flying right off the ledge you were standing on, or send you straight into a completely endless pit. You know, but that's cool. That's cool. I mean, it's BeetleJuice. Kinda. I mean, if you squint, it's mint, right? Yeah, not right. That's why she's coming in at number 10. I have a whole lot of nostalgia for this movie. I mean, I watch it every year. I could probably quote half of it. But I mean, if you're in the mood for a sour, unfair LJN type experience during Halloween, I mean, look no further. BeetleJuice by LJN. But you know, it's not all bad. If you can get used to the controls, it's pretty fun. The levels are nice and varied. There's actually some pretty fun platforming that can go on. But it's just another one of those things that you have to get used to the way it plays, because a lot of the times platforms you need to fall down onto are off screen, and if you don't fall right in the right place, then it'll act like that you just jumped off a ledge and you'll lose your life. But hey, you can go into a store and buy a Medusa head from a random character from the movie that has no association with being in a store. So that's sick. And I'm not gonna lie, they have inserted just a little bit of BeetleJuice personality. You'll see it come up every once in a while, like whenever you die enough times to lose all of your lives finally, which you'll do every 15 seconds, you get this little funny bit. Yeah, it sure isn't. I mean, he thought it was bad when he was trapped halfway in between the world of the dead and the world of the living, and now he gets sucked into this video game. Or should I say, fever dream. But now I think it's time to move on to number 9. Abbadocks. A side-scrolling shooter that I always come back to because of the story a little bit more than the actual gameplay. It's kind of compelling. So, in the year 5012, the planet Abbadocks is eaten by a giant alien organism known as Parasitus. Having consumed Abbadocks, the alien takes the form of the planet and seeks to devour other planets. The galactic military launches an attack but is destroyed by Parasitus, who goes on to devour the hospital ship carrying Princess Maria. Second Lieutenant Nazal, the only surviving fighter of the Galactic Fleet, attempts to enter Parasitus's body and rescue Princess Maria before it's too late. And even the little intro segment here goes along really well with that story. It just shows you entering space, shows the character slowly being sucked into Parasitus, the gigantic living planet organism. So yeah, story-wise, I really love this game. Not a lot of other, scrolling side shooters had such a fleshed out story that was so interesting at the same time. Really adds to the level of suspense whenever you first start the game up. And I also really like the choices they used with the graphics. Everything is either a monster or a severed head or something like that, and it's really refreshing whenever you're used to playing Galaga and Galexian and Gradius and all of the greats like that. It's refreshing to get not only a new story, but visuals that are from a completely different universe. But that's kind of where my praise for this game ends, because the gameplay itself is just as average as it could possibly be. It's not that great, but it's not that bad either. It's just run-of-the-mill. It's the kind of thing where you can find sweet spots in the screen, and you might not even have to move throughout a level if you have the right weapon and found the right spot. And that's why it stays at number 9. The story alone is interesting enough to make it well worth playing at least once a year. Which brings us to number 8, Zombie Nation. This has got to be one of the most ridiculous NES games to ever come out. I mean, we just watched a severed head fly out of an old building. And wait till you hear this plot. 1999. What appeared to be a harmless meteorite crashing in the Nevada desert had turned out to be Dark Seed, an evil alien creature with horrible powers. By shooting strange magnetic rays, Dark Seed had turned the helpless nation into zombies and had brought the Statue of Liberty to life to do his dirty work. These rays had also given him control over many deadly weapons, but none were more powerful than the legendary samurai sword, Shura. When the great head of the samurai, Namakubi, heard that the sword had fallen into evil hands, he set off immediately for the United States. For only he possessed the strength and knowledge needed to recapture the magical sword and free the U.S. from the evil clutches of Dark Seed. What? I mean... Okay, let me try and set this straight. So, an alien who crashed to Earth inside of a meteorite turned all of the American people into zombies and has control over various deadly weapons, and an ancient, severed samurai head is the only one who can kill the alien and save the United States. Random projectiles being vomited through an ancient samurai's severed head, and bullets and helicopters from every single direction. Not to mention giant laser beams that just come on and come off randomly. I mean, this is a game where you're gonna die a lot, but at least in this one, I feel like when I die, it's usually 100% my fault. If I pay attention, I can see that bullet hit me. It's not like cheap deaths. It's not like it has bad controls and you fly into something whenever you don't mean to. That's the satisfying part. That's kind of why I kept it a little higher up on the list, because it just plays better than the other two titles. And it has such a ridiculous fantasy story that couldn't be more random, and I love it for that too. Which brings us to number 7. Maniac Mansion. And you know, my first time playing this game was actually on MS-DOS. I had no idea it was on the NES until many years later. And honestly, I'm pretty surprised at its playability. I was a little worried about how this kind of game would work on an NES, because I'm used to using a mouse and a keyboard with it. But using the D-pad for the mouse really isn't that bad. And the graphics look really, really good for NES. I love the giant oversized sprites, the cutscenes. It was really, really cool to play this kind of game on an NES, and it still is to this day. And honestly, it was really hard for me to place this one, because I really, really love this game, and I love the way it plays, and the different visual scenes that you're presented, but I don't like how long it takes to pull off these moves on the NES. It's not bad, but it takes more time. So that's really the main reason why it sits at 7th place. But all that aside, strictly just talking about the version for the NES, this is a really good game. But it takes a lot of time to get into it, and it takes a lot of time when you make a mistake, because you have to usually go back and replay the game from the beginning and get back to your point of the mistake to learn what you need to do instead. But I feel like that never-ending feeling of thinking that guy's just gonna pop around the corner and find you really adds to the creep factor. The visuals are super weird. They're not necessarily scary, they're just strange and dreamlike. And it seems like such a big adventure on such an old console like the NES. And it's surprising how much you actually interact with your environment throughout this game. And walking into rooms that have no lights and you have to find a flashlight or a power sources, or just blindly walk around in the dark and try to find objects, kind of like you would in real life. I mean, it's very encapsulating. It's a deep experience if you're by yourself and it's a dark night. It's a really good game to just lose yourself in for a long time. And the fact that it has multiple different endings makes it satisfying to do so, because there's so much that you could miss or overlook. And there's so many different decisions you can make and different players you can play as. It stays interesting for multiple playthroughs. So if you haven't tried it yet, Maniac Mansion on NES. If you can get used to the pace and how long it takes you to move about, then you won't be let down by this one. I mean, in what other game, on Nintendo at least, can you accidentally kill everyone in a 5-mile radius? I mean, come on. That's about as ridiculous as it gets. And coming in at number 6. Uninvited. Another multi-platform game that I was really surprised was fun on the NES. And it is best played during Halloween. Uninvited is a true thriller on the NES, and something you may not be able to pull yourself away from if you're into these slower-paced, story-driven games. I mean, we open here after waking up in a car accident. We relive the situation. It's so unsettling and realistic. And it doesn't really throw you any bones either. You just wake up in that car. So you have to think about it the same way you'd think about it if you were really there. First of all, let's get that car door open. And then, of course, the gigantic, scary house. Right as the car explodes into flames behind us. And always a good bit of humor thrown in as well. Now this really at its core is your standard point-and-click adventure, but its situations and gameplay are what put it above Maniac Mansion for me. It's a little bit quicker to do stuff, the pointer snaps to certain things, and I really like that. I wish Maniac Mansion did that. It falls behind Maniac Mansion because I think it has better visuals. It has more ridiculous-looking areas to adventure throughout. This game is a little more standard, a little more realistic. Things are just a normal living room to standard creepy things. But its story and its gameplay is really where this one shines. The narrative is at such a better pace, and there's so much more of it, it makes the overall experience so much more memorable, and definitely more haunting. And you know, while the creepy factor in Maniac Mansion largely comes from the fact that you're inside of someone's house that doesn't know you're there and you don't want to get caught, that suspense, this one is a lot more true to its name. You feel like you're uninvited in that home, and you can't figure out why, and you can't see why at the beginning, and things just happen around you, like that door slamming shut right behind you. And everything just escalates from there. It's a truly thrilling and haunting experience, if you can let yourself go. And finally, at number 5. Metroid, the NES classic. It really needs no introduction. And honestly, the reason why it comes in at number 5 on this list is because it's not too much anything. It's not too spooky, it's not too scary, it's not too difficult, it's not too engaging. It's the perfect 5 spot. It's the benchmark for what a spooky game should be on the NES, at least as far as a Metroidvania type game is concerned. Just the way they set the scene and the way that the music blends with the way the graphics look, this is an amazing game to turn all the lights down to focus all your attention on, and lose yourself in the world of Metroid. This game strikes the perfect balance between emptiness and suspense. Coming in at number 4, Frankenstein, The Monster Returns. And in my opinion, this game has a really good balance of story and gameplay. Both. So here's the plot, right? Set sometime after the Frankenstein story, the titular monster, erroneously named Frankenstein as in many other sources, returns from the dead, leading a supernatural army by way of magic. He razes several villages and kidnaps a beautiful maiden named Emily, with the intent on making her his bride. The monster even manages to use his magic to subdue several mythical entities such as Death and Medusa as well. The player is a young swordsman of the village, determined to stop the supernatural army, rescue Emily, and slay the monster once and for all. So basically, the story is Frankenstein went crazy evil, destroyed this whole village, took this guy's girlfriend, and he happens to be a swordsman. Which kind of hits me similar to Ganon coming in taking Zelda away from Link the swordsman. But whatever. It's Frankenstein. And in my opinion, it's just a really solid beat-em-up. Has nice level design, good enemies, controls feel nice and tight, they don't feel cheap. When I die, I feel like it's because I suck, which is how it should be. You have secret rooms you can enter, things you need to remember, special items that actually do something that make it worth going and finding them. It's pretty solid, and even like the end level bosses have a little bit of narrative to them. I mean, if you figure out how to fight them, they're not very hard. But otherwise, it's really fun. But I mean, it's fun in the, it's a good Halloween game. That's exactly why it got the number 4 spot, too. It is not a good Frankenstein game. It has a totally made-up story after what we're familiar with, so it can be whatever it wanted to be. We just got lucky that the story they chose to go with ended up being pretty okay. But it's not Frankenstein. But it is a good Halloween game. I mean, you're gonna fight monsters, dragons, snakes, spiders. Any random Halloween stereotype you could probably come across in this game and beat it up with your fist or a club. And for that, it's pretty fun. It's definitely worth coming back to every year. And finally, our top 3, coming in at number 3. Kid Dracula. Now I know this game only came out in Japan on the NES, but as you can see, there are English translations, and I think that that's why this still deserves a spot on the list. That, and I grew up playing Kid Dracula on the original Game Boy. That had a US release. And it's that reason that I even found this version at all. But it is so good that I can't even stand it. Like I said, I grew up playing the version on Game Boy. And when you play that for several years and then you randomly come across this version for the NES, you can imagine how mind-blowing that was. It's like you were playing a dream. That's the way I dreamed it would look whenever I had the Game Boy version. And it just delivered. And in every way this game delivers. The controls are spot on, the pace is really good, the visuals are just totally unique and ultra Halloween in the best kind of way. I mean, it's Kiddie Castlevania, which in my opinion almost makes it the perfect Halloween game. I mean, come on, even in the first level, the background here distinctly screams Castlevania. And I'm gonna be honest, my least favorite part about Castlevania is the whip. The fact that this game, you just shoot, more like Mega Man, it's more like Mega Man and Castlevania mixed together, which makes it so satisfying. Of course, it's not very difficult. Anybody could beat this game. But the player satisfaction is just through the roof. And I'm honestly just so excited that this game got a proper release finally in the United States. You can get it on that Castlevania Anniversary Collection for the Switch. And that collection's worth it in my opinion. A little bit off topic, but that's worth the money. I think it's on sale right now too. And honestly, that's the way I recommend playing this game. And I do recommend playing all the way through. I'll be honest, sometimes the main bosses are a little bit difficult, and you have to memorize the way that they work, or at least I do. But since that's one of the most difficult things you're going to run into, it really makes it satisfying when you finally beat them. And it really makes you want to push forward further and further in the game. And the graphics just are so unique. You know, I'm gonna be honest, I experience a certain vibe whenever I play this game. And I've realized that the only other game that gives me that same vibe is Mario Land 2, The 6 Golden Coins. That game and this game are both so unique and varied in their level design that I really do think Kid Dracula deserves a spot in both the NES and the Game Boy list of just classic hits, or at least hidden gems. It's definitely a game I think everybody should play. Coming in at number 2. A Nightmare on Elm Street. Oh God. Well, part of the requirements for this list were to be scary. And I can tell you, this is gonna be scary. And honestly, this game is at number 2 for several reasons. Number 1, in my opinion, it's probably LJN's best game. It's a lot more satisfying to play than BeetleJuice. It suffers from a lot of the same problems with the controls, but they're not as bad in this one. Or it's either that they're not as bad, or the level design just doesn't accentuate how bad they are. That, and also you can use up to 4 players with this game, and that is wicked for the NES. And finally, just the simple fact that this game actually does kind of make sense. Its storyline is similar to A Nightmare on Elm Street, or at least a lot more similar than anything else LJN has ever done. So basically, in this game, you need to collect all the body parts, or else Freddy will come back and haunt your dreams. The cool part about this game is that it shifts between day and night. I always like that about Castlevania 2. Now, it is a little tedious. There's a lot of very simple enemies that take a lot of hits like that right there. But it's not a bad game. There's really only 2 frustrating things about it. Number 1 is, if you haven't picked all the pieces up yet, you will randomly have your dreams haunted by Freddy and have a boss battle, whether you're ready for it or not. While it adds to the suspense and the vibe and the energy of the game, it sucks. I'm never ready for it whenever he pops up. All you can do is do your best to survive. Maybe you can kill him, but all you have is a fist. All you can try to do is make it through and he'll disappear. Now, the other thing that is even more frustrating than that somehow is that the point of this game is to walk outside and enter a building and defeat the boss in the building. The only problem with that is that only one house will let you enter it, and there's no way to know which one that is, and it randomly changes. So it's a lot like Friday the 13th in that way. You're just going to be walking around trying to find that one house at the right time, trying to figure out the complexities of the times of when what does what. That is what really sucks. But I would be lying if I said it wasn't fun to play and that the controls weren't good. Because it is, and they are. Very surprising for LJN. And finally, number 1. My all-time favorite NES game to play during Halloween. Monster Party. It is the perfect blend of insane graphics, ridiculous gameplay, and a totally absurd plot. Check this out. Mark was walking home from a ball game. He looked up and saw a bright star. While he stared at it, the star got bigger and bigger. The beauty of the star made his eyes moist, so he didn't notice that the star fell and landed right in front of him. It wasn't a star, but a monster. Mark quickly asked, "Who are you?" "I'm Bert." "What's up?" "I'm looking for help. Evil monsters are out of control in my world. Come and help me." "I'm afraid to fight the evil monsters." "Don't worry. With your weapon, you'll be able to destroy them easily." This isn't a weapon. It's a bat. batter, anything is okay. Anyhow, let's go. Bert grabbed Mark's hand and flew away. What's your name? Mark. Mark. My planet is dangerous. So we must act together. How? Like this! Then they fused together. And this is how Mark's adventure begins. Literally, what? Anyway, this is Monster Party. And it's a wild ride. It has just about every horror movie monster you could think of. Every stereotype is probably a boss in this game. You literally walk around and smash things with bats. And every once in a while, you'll kill an enemy that'll drop a pill. And if you pop that pill, ooh, we'll see what that does. But literally, this game is just fun in its purest form for like nonsense and ridiculousness. I mean, I think the controls are great. The graphics are crazy looking. I mean, it has a cycle also. It's not a day and night cycle. It's more like a normal cycle and gore cycle. All of a sudden, everything just shifts into something like disgusting and decrepit and bloody. It's wild. Oh, and here's that pill I was talking about, and if you pop that, you turn into the freaking monster thing. It's just like Mark's story begins, just like they said. Why though? I don't know, but I like it. I mean, you get enough of these pills, you can fly as this little creature all over the map, and it kind of comes in handy for if you just play normal and get to like the second level and die and have to go all the way back to the first level. You can just, if you remember that where that pill is, you can pop it and fly right back to where you were. Oh, and just like that, everything becomes gory and disgusting, just like Halloween should be. This game has got to have the most amount of blood on screen in like literally any Nintendo game ever. Even more than anything. It's the most ridiculous, over-the-top NES game I think I've ever played, and I love it. It's not very unfair, it's not cruel, it's just a fun game that is ridiculous. In my opinion, this is the best Halloween game you can play on the original NES. And of course, the honorable mentions. The Castlevania series. I recommend any of them. Of course, Ghosts and Goblins. Instant classic. Haunted Halloween 85 is a really good new homebrew game. You can buy it on Steam or a physical copy. Ending on Fester's Quest, maybe the most frustrating Halloween game I've ever played. Thank you for sticking around this long. I really appreciate each and every one of you, and I hope to see you next time on
The Nostalgic Future.